welcome to a new episode of the iMark Show, the channel that is usually focused on all things tech and primarily Apple, but today we're going to be talking about something else. And my fear is that we aren't actually going to be talking, but I'm actually going to be ranting. And if you aren't into that type of content, I fully understand that this isn't the type of content that I like, love, follow, or encourage, but I will try to stay as social and as likable as ever, which is all obviously up to you to decide whether I stay true to myself, whether I remain honest, and whether my rant is justified. As always, I encourage you to leave constructive criticism. It's pretty late. I try to react as quickly as possible right now, because I know that otherwise I will lose that spark tomorrow. Maybe I will try justify it in some way. Yeah, so this is kind of an off-the-cuff reaction to something that just came out. Or at least it came out 18 hours ago, but it's when I saw it and it's still less than a days away from being newsworthy. So yeah, this is what I wanted to react to, and it has obviously something to do with Apple, as we'll do 90% of the stuff that I'm going to do on this channel. Now, this is about Linus Sebastian, or Linus Tech Tips, as his channel is known, or Linus Media Group, as is the conglomeration known of the channels he has, and obviously the workers working for him. Now, this is the latest episode of the Rant Show. For those who don't know, this is his weekly show where he reacts to news, to personal information about the channel and what they're going to be doing. And obviously, the last episode, as you might see, is I finally started a Mac channel. Now, I've listened to that. They're talking about it for about half an hour, a little more. There's a lot of useless banter there. So this isn't going to be a reaction video. Like, it's pointless to make a reaction video to a talking head video because I would just have to mute them, and this obviously would have no point. So what I would rather do is you will hear me talking, and during that I will try to give you some context on why I believe certain things to be what I believe them to be. And you are very free to just tune out of the video feed, and there won't be much interesting happening here. Mostly what I will be showing is just not even snippets, but basically just the thumbnails of YouTube videos from Linus and maybe some other channels where I will try to contextualize on why I don't believe certain choices should be made, and why I believe that the kind of content that Linus has been making thus far is suited to be making an Apple-centric channel, especially not without hiring basically a completely new team to do so, even though I know that some on his team, including Anthony, actually use Apple, or at least are knowledgeable in the knowledge and the usage of Apple devices. So it kind of remains to be seen how it all pans out. Now, I'm sorry, as I said, this is a talking head video without an actual talking head, because I might go on camera at some point, but not right now. Maybe in half a year, once I'm finished with all my exams and got a new camera. Right now, this channel is mostly an outlet for me, my opinions, and yeah, hopefully for all those of you who actually like what I'm talking about. So let's just get started. I will leave a timeline down below in the video, so you can basically skip the intro banter, and I hope those who actually know me or understand what I'm doing with this channel would like to hear that, to understand why this kind of content is actually coming from me. Now, in this video, Linus is basically just talking up about their plans for a not anymore potential channel, but a channel in planning that is Mac or basically Apple centric. And there he also mentions a lot of things. Like he is talking about that they will do a right to repair video where he is talking about how Apple usually is talking out of both sides of their mouth in terms of their environmental stance, but at the same time their refusal to support right to repair. He talks about the design changes that has happened over time and how Apple design is generally seen by other reviewers as something to even talk about, while he is talking about how it's basically not something he is interested in, mostly referring to stuff like icon changes inside iOS over time and stuff like transparencies and translucencies that Apple introduced throughout the system, as he's mostly focused on functionality, which I'm fully getting, as I am the critical view on Apple's right to repair. Now, this video is not an Apple defense video. Apple deserves criticism on many topics. Right to repair is one of them, but I'm not Louis Rossmann. I don't agree with the fundamental stance that Apple's devices should be designed in a way that fulfills a very niche audience's wish to be fully repairable and upgradable. I don't believe that, but I believe that with everything that Apple can do with the devices they ship, they should be doing it, including making as many great components available to third-party shops, making some amount of repair guidelines for people that at least may leak them out, just so that people have a nice repair guideline if they get their hands on first-party parts. Through whatever channel. But even then, I still also believe that this is vastly overblown. iPhones are some of the most repairable new flagships in comparison to even something like the Galaxy S21 series. Just go to iFixit, and they have some of the most cohesive ecosystem for repairs outside of shops because of sites like iFixit very much focusing on Apple Tech, because it's so popular in the US specifically, which is a major market with a lot of financial power. But again, that's not what this is about. Now, as you can see here, is Linus has done a lot of Apple related videos, and a lot of them are very good actually. There is his M1 Mac mini review. I believe he has done an M1 MacBook review on both the Air and the Pro. His big mistake, like it's always clickbaity with Linus, but that's also the case with most YouTubers. Here's his video on the iMac Pro that they broke but couldn't fix themselves, and then complained about Apple not giving them parts because there weren't any, as the iMac Pro was brand new and all the parts were going into production, and the repairs and the replacement models were going to the people that didn't break the warranty in the first few weeks of the iMac Pro's existence. And then there's the Louis Rossmann video where they are fixing together what is called the unfixable iMac Pro, which I'm not defending the iMac Pro's construction or how long it took Apple to get parts. I will also say that some very qualified YouTubers, including Rene Ritchie, have reacted to that video and have called out a lot of the BS inside the video and how much stuff is misleading because you cannot see, as they are showing the braking display on like, did it break during that shot, or did they recreate the shot specifically for that? Now, it's pretty obvious if you go through it, but it isn't left obvious to the audience. You have to go through to really understand. And then there is some misleading stuff in the conversations they had with Apple. Essentially, they just even circle some stuff where Apple very clearly saying like, this ain't something that we repair, nor are you even entitled here to anything. And then they're like, but we want to pay you to repair us that computer. And Apple is like, that's literally what we told you. Like, You cannot just replace one fact with another because you feel like it. Then there is stuff on Apple's thermal throttling issues, the Mac Pro, which obviously the Mac Pro, I've criticized it myself. It's a very expensive part. It only makes sense at the very upper end, but then it also stops being affordable for 99.9% of the population. I think it's kind of a pointless product in that way, especially with the introduction of the M1 Max. So, but yeah, why am I against a Mac-centric channel from Linus Media Group, if I actually say that I like some of his Apple-centric YouTube videos and actually agree with a lot that he has to say from time to time. Now, even if I weren't agreeing with him, I would still be supportive of any YouTuber trying to expand their outreach. And a lot of people will just think that I'm afraid that he will just relentlessly bash Apple and blah blah blah. It will create even more haters, even though there's absolutely zero chance of that happening. I assure you that he has 13 million viewers. There's enough Apple bashing happening throughout all his channels. There will also be some supportive stuff because I don't believe that Linus is a troll or anything like that. As I said, I really like Linus himself and the content he's making by his own or with a limited amount of the people working from him, like Anthony, is actually very good. But I don't think that Linus has the resources or the know-how to make an Apple-centric YouTube channel right now. And fundamentally, there are several things that I believe are proving that. Linus retiring, it should be, yeah. That's the video where it was done a little over a year ago. It's about him thinking of retiring. Now, obviously, he was going through some difficult stuff. He has been leading a great amount of content and the channel itself, and with all the side channels that they have for years. So it's absolutely understandable that he might just want to take a break. And he did. Not even regarding this video, but just generally over the last 2 or 3 years, he had moments where he was less hands-on. Now this has changed, and he's basically back in full force, except for like channels like Tech Linked and Tech Quickie, where he is on from time to time, but where he isn't dominating the content like he is on LTT itself. But I think that this video actually says more than a lot of us understand. And this is that Linus has been historically pretty hands-on with the videos made by other people in his company, Linus Media Group. Now, that's great. I really appreciate bosses that are hands-on without being overly restrictive on what you can and cannot do. And from everything that I understand, Linus is a pretty good boss. But my God, is his channel overblown in terms of the content that they are stuffing into it. Like, when you look at Linus Tech Tips, it's a shadow of its former self in terms of the amount of detail that is put into every video that they are making. Just, excuse me for having half German content here, but it's basically understandable, and the titles are in English anyway. Plus, I don't want to interrupt my rant. This is going just like this onto YouTube, and you can love or hate it no matter what. There, as always, there are like building challenges or just comparisons, like more jokey videos, and just super basic stuff that I don't think would have even warranted any content. Like, our hard drive's still worth it. Like, there's like hundreds of videos and that stuff, easily digestible, content on the internet and always like, and there are some interesting products here, even like a combined drive or that has two SSDs to get you a little bit more longevity and the speed that you would expect from a high-end SSD, like a Nintendo Switch competitor based on Windows. So it's not like I hate his content, but I just implore you to look at the content. Like a lot of announcement reactions, some reviews, and some content pieces that I actually really like his criticism of Nvidia's like pretending to nerf the capabilities of the RTX 3060 in terms of mining, only for it to actually be less viable as a mining card, apparently. But then it became a fully viable mining card in like a week once it was hacked. I believe it was a full month, but even then it was just for Ethereum. So yeah, it's again, I'm not hating on Linus. What I am hating against is that Linus absolutely has zero resources to further stretch himself thin. And the most important part about this is the amount of content that they're making in general, but also what kind of content they're making. Like review, let's look at his RTX reviews. Now, this is a review of the RTX 3080. This is him unboxing the RTX 3080, and this is similar stuff with the 3090 and reacting to the naming scheme of the 3080 mobile, and then other channels inside his ecosystem reacting to like TechQuickie, reacting to the graphics card shortages that we are obviously all experiencing online. Here's him showing can it run Crysis, which is a meme. Now, his video on the RTX 3080 is 14 minutes long. And obviously, it's good to be short. It's good to not bore your audience. But there's a lot of banter in those videos. There's a lot of explanation. There's a lot of opinion. And it kind of boils down to that Linus' videos on actual core PC components like CPUs and GPUs, like let's look at Linus Tech tips and actually look at the 6800 XT reviews. It's a 13-minute video, so it's basically we can see a little bit. You can kind of see like that this is 13 to like 15 minutes of content is pretty usual for them. And as I said, there is a lot of banter, a lot of opinion. And while some might say, well, what else do you expect there to be? And how long would you like for it to be? My problem with this is, for one, there's very little benchmarking going on in those videos. The benchmarks are usually not big enough to be representative. Like their number is simply not big enough. I think the tests they are choosing are very by the numbers, very unimaginative. They are never like stressing kind of different workloads, making opinions on the actual experience, on compatibility. And while this is fine and dandy, obviously everybody can do whatever they want to do. I would just like to tell you that this is a PC-centric channel. And this is the amount of work they put into reviews like that. And while those reviews aren't terrible by any means, just look at Hardware Unboxed. Now, Hardware Unboxed is a primarily benchmark-focused channel. I understand that. But, like, it's just so difficult to even comprehend the difference in quality that comes from the longer content. Here's a 6800 XT review in general. Here's a comparison specifically between the 6800 XT and the 3080. Here are reviews of different AIB models of the 6800 XT. And throughout, this is for relatively new graphics card. If you actually look at something like the 5700 XT for hardware unboxed, or something like hardware Canucks, like, for one, you will see like 20 AIB reviews, but more importantly, because obviously I don't think that Linus needs to be doing AIB reviews. I think it should be relegated to smaller channels like that. But my God, is there a lot of follow up throughout the years, as the graphics card is maturing, as its competition is changing, as the market is changing, reactions to how important ray tracing is, how important and how good DLSS is, and Linus does all of that too, but he is doing it at half or a quarter the capacity that he should be doing it for a PC centric channel that does a ton of giveaways, does a ton of sponsorships. Like, look at this, Linus Intel. I believe, how do they have? Yeah, it's called the Extreme Tech Upgrade, where basically they have Intel go into their homes and upgrade, like, yeah, their computer setups. Obviously not fully, and obviously they try to create some content out of it. They just don't let themselves be sponsored for $5,000 and then don't do anything with it. Obviously, but those are sponsorship pieces. Like, this ain't the type of content that to me is actually very moral in some ways. Like, Linus is being sponsored by companies that he is regularly destroying inside his own videos. When you look at Linus and his, I believe it was a PC buying, it's not a buy, it wasn't a buying guide, it was the video where, it was their secret shopper video, right? So the secret shopper video is actually interesting because it's him reacting to undercover shopping from different manufacturers and different PC builder shops. So my question is, if you then go on to destroy one of the brands that you've tested, then why do you go on making sponsorships with them? Like, why don't you make follow-up pieces on how much things have improved? And I don't mean a second secret shopper where you take just one random sample and create a potentially very false impression based on one person you are talking to. Now, obviously, it's YouTube. They don't have to be scientifically correct. They don't have to work with all the probabilities that come with calling in and getting maybe an unqualified worker on the telephone. But those are my main concerns with Linus right now. There's too much going on in his channels. This is just LTT that I've been showing. I could show you Tech Quickie and Tech Linked and how reactionary all of that is. Even like, just ignore the stuff where obviously they are talking about news, as they should be. That's why they have channels like Tech Quickie and Tech Linked. Obviously Tech Linked is more about news, Tech Quickie is more about explainers. But it can also be reactionary to whatever is like the burning question in the PC community. So I don't want this rant to be a hate on Linus. Listen to what I'm saying. A lot of his content is good. The way he built up his channel is fantastic and very admirable. But there's just not enough in Linus and the team he has been building to make yet another channel, and even less to make an Apple-centric channel unless they hire a completely new team to be handling that, with Linus overseeing it and maybe presenting some stuff. Like, just looking at it, Linus has some decent Mac reviews, obviously. But this is the M1, but it should also include other videos like that. Here's him bashing the Surface Pro X versus the M1 MacBook Air. Like, and there's one problem that I've had with videos like, are Apple's M1 Macs that good? Now, that is obviously not a wrong title to have, but it builds upon a lot of the uncertainty that people like Linus have created based on their dislike for the graphs that Apple have shown during the M1 event. Now, I don't care. I don't really care either way. What I don't like is not even the coverage that Linus gave the M1 announcement, but the fact that he never followed it up and that he actively discouraged the people that came out to criticize him for it and said that you were overly reactionary, overly funny in the way that like it was pretty misleading on what you were actually saying, what you were actually believing, and how good you thought this might be. Um, Actually doing a disservice to your audience, which is huge. But those are the reviews he is making. Like, short, like, you look at that. The M1 Mac Mini review is somehow longer than his RTX and RX reviews, like his NVIDIA and his AMD reviews. But like, tell me, please, in what world does the man that he's doing all of this also have room for a channel that might compete with something like this? Like, it's a small. Yes, Renee is a small YouTuber. Renee is also Canadian. He is polite and he will be the first to tell you that more diversity will help the internet, and maybe we should have some new voices in the Apple centric YouTube community. I'm trying to be one of those voices, including hopefully making more critical stuff as I actually hit more stuff that I'm critical about. Right now, I actually think that everything is going quite swimmingly, at least with what I want to buy. Um, but not only is he covering Apple news, which is also what Linus is covering on Tech Linked from time to time, like the beef between Mark Zuckerberg and Tim Cook. Even though it's more a beef coming from Mark Zuckerberg, I don't think that Tim is childish enough to even think about it twice. But as you go through this, there's something that hits you, which is, for one, a lot of the videos that actually cover like bad takes on Apple. The first one that Renee will call out is Apple itself. Like when Tim Cook said that the app distribution model in iOS would be broken if they allowed side loading, Renee called it out. He made videos on why Apple should allow xCloud onto the App Store. And even when I don't agree with Renee on some of those issues, I obviously agree on xCloud. And please give me PS now, or whatever the successor is going to be eventually, on the iPhone as well, please. But even then, there is so much sincerity, there is so much knowledge about this topic, there is so much personal opinions and facts. Because yes, facts can be personal. If you like something and it's your opinion, and you actually build your workflow around it, and if you compare an optimized workflow for you from Apple versus a workflow from a Windows device, and you like it more, it's an objective fact that it's then better for you. Like, whatever we decide for ourselves is still important. And I understand that Linus will try covering it in different ways. Like, to me, to understand how Linus is unqualified to do so is whenever Linus does iPhone reviews, like, those are abhorrent. I honestly believe that those are some of the worst content that he has ever made. Because yes, I know some people will come at me and say Linus used to like iPhones, he used to use iPhones, he had videos on the iPhone 4 back in the old days. Believe me, I've been following Linus longer than a lot of you have. But it's like, now the iPhone XS video probably is the one that defines it best. It's when Linus actually almost came out about like that he just doesn't like how the media cycle is forcing him to cover iPhones. He's been kind of fed up, and you can see a lot of that in this review, where he's basically talking about how it just is still the same like the iPhone 10, that it won't encourage anyone from switching to the iPhone from the iPhone 10, and how Apple has become a follower in terms of design and isn't setting trends anymore. And then he's making videos about how great the iPhone 11 Pro is, never doing any follow ups on the statements that he's been doing in those videos. Like some pretty big criticism actually against the cameras on the iPhones from LTT have never really come true. Like a lot of his criticism on color science and focus. Like, yeah, I can understand maybe iPhones aren't like perfect for some of the weather that he has around him, and obviously it's based on personal observations. But where's the follow-up? Where's making people understand that, yeah, I'm sorry, we've had some issues here. Maybe it was because it was like the first week of release, which obviously I've had those issues too. All devices have them. um, Even though Linus does iPhone reviews usually pretty late in the cycle, so it's not like he is reacting very quickly, but usually the content itself has gotten a little old by the time it's released. I don't know why, it's just the way it comes through. I'm obviously not making any statements here. And then he's recommending the iPhone, like the iPhone SE and stuff like that. There's a ton of him reacting to the iPhone 12. But this ain't material for an Apple centric channel. Like when Linus is doing a video like why I haven't reviewed the iPhone 12, and he is reacting to, I understand that he obviously wants to react to the iPhone 12 mini and Pro Max so that he can give you a full understanding of the lineup itself. And maybe a Mac Apple centric channel made from him would allow him to do so, because obviously he wouldn't have to mix that content onto his main channel. But this is what I'm saying. Like, there is no need for an extra Apple centric channel where Linus has rants on right to repair, or Apple, or like the review culture where people focus on whatever colors Apple has changed in iOS, because apparently talking about like changes to the appearance of the operating system that starts with something like icons but goes deep into the actual design of the apps, where translucency and other elements create like a cohesive order where you understand what UI elements are where and how they behave, which is very important on a touch-based contextual system that isn't as fixed into place like a mouse-based system, and where a lot of stuff is constantly changing because you have to scroll around. But regardless, like the iPhone 10 review pushing me to Android, the iPhone 10, the most comprehensive change in iPhone history, one of the best devices ever made by Apple, especially one of the best iPhones. Yeah, and then it's also like weird. I understand many reviewers did that, like praising the iPhone 11, where they criticized the iPhone 10s, which is weird because the design was like a year newer. OLED displays were much newer for Apple. But also the kind of quality of the OLED displays that Apple was bringing. And it's like, I fully understand that it's all, everything is personal, and Linus has even done some AirPods reviews. They are pretty favorable. Sometimes Apple just does it better. AirPods Pro review. Then there are reviews like, is Apple even trying? Which my point is no, because they don't need to with AirPods 2. Like people actually want that design, so Apple didn't change it. And now that people might want a new design, Apple will mix those designs and give you a new device. Yeah, like an audiophile perspective, a perfectly valid analysis, something that Snazzy Labs has done, and he is an Apple fan, but he destroyed the AirPods, the traditional AirPods in terms of sound quality. He's done AirPods Max. It's not really a review what's happening here, but whatever. Um, yeah, so I'm not saying that Linus is completely unqualified to cover anything Apple, um, even though I would say that his qualifications to do so are pretty low, based on the scale of the actual reviewers that we have, because he also has to cover other stuff, because he has to basically divide himself up between the other channels that he has. And I'm not saying that he would be doing that channel all by himself. What I am saying is that he would still oversee it, and that the channel would still be very much similar to the content that he is making on his channels, on the channels that already exist. And if allowed to go into more detail, I think they would be fairly more critical, because obviously some issues like right to repair might not be the most important thing he would want to cover on his own 13 million subscriber channel, especially if it's just about Apple. But what I am saying is, Linus is doing decent content, but he's doing decent content in almost everything. A lot of that content has no follow up. A lot of the content is shorter than it needs to be. A lot of the content is less detailed than it should be. This goes for Apple content, but that's understandable. It's a PC first channel, and as it should be. It started that way. That's where most of its audience is. That's where it will always be the most successful. But what it also refers to, and what it also applies to, is the Windows content on his channel. I'm not saying obviously the Windows content itself, but his content on the PC master race, like what he would usually like to cover, like stuff like can it run crisis, like consistent reviews, consistent benchmark, consistent follow-ups on the content that is already on there. Even stuff like when they showed like the Microsoft Flight Simulator, like there should be more videos like that. There should be more reactions to crisis like video games that challenge the market. Whenever he's showing consoles, and because consoles at least are related more to PCs, I would even say, than Macs, even though Macs are a personal computer, but at least it jives with the content about gaming that he's doing. So where are like the gaming reviews of like how powerful a console is versus how powerful a PC is in actual follow-ups? He does all that content, and I understand that my video will probably be hated because I don't understand that Linus is doing all of this. He's doing it once, he's doing it in a very short form, and he never follows it up in a meaningful way. He rarely retracts what he speculates about but doesn't turn out true. He is very good at retracting actual mistakes. And we actually have a very good video where he had that. This was about the PlayStation 5 SSD and his laughing at Tim Sweeney, who those who know me know I don't like. He was one of my first followers on Twitter, which was weird to have the leader of a multi-billion-dollar company have, like, I believe it was like 100 people or 150 people he was following back then. But he was also one of my first 12 followers, because we were constantly engaging in conversations about Apple and the nature of the App Store. And then he eventually blocked me once he understood that I'm not turning the page. Yeah, but it's quite funny, but that's not the point here. Just check out my Twitter, it's interesting in that regard. Maybe I will pin some stuff from Tim Sweeney in the next few days that we've. Oh, I actually cannot do that. He blocked me. Forget it. This was a video him apologizing for bashing Tim Sweeney about him saying that the PS5 SSD has like an industry-leading SSD, and he was holding up like a 20 gigabytes per second SSD, where you had like 3 or 4 SSDs combined all into one PCIe connector. And yeah, he had some valid points, but the points that Tim Sweeney was making were about the custom decompression and compression engines and processors on the PS5, the direct integration into the graphics card, which means that there's less latency in the kind of data travel that needs to happen, the kind of RAM allocation that can happen because you have such quick transfers, and obviously all of this combined together, plus the APIs that Sony is building, the engines like Unreal Engine 5 that are built with that in mind right now. Like a lot of the Unreal Engine 5 demo actually was slightly modified in order to support the SSD throughputs. This is why it is so RAM efficient, for example. Forget all of that. Like smarter people than me, like Jonathan Morrison, have reacted to Linus's bad Apple takes, as has Renee, as has basically a lot of the Apple press. Like I can personally recommend like Linus Tech, Linus, where he is reacting to a lot of the anti-Apple content that's sometimes happening. I actually cannot find it right now. I'm sorry. I'm just very tired, so I'm trying to get this rant over with. I believe it's it's exactly like that. I don't think that I will be able to find it because him reacting to the Snazzy Labs videos, but there's a video of him reacting to Linus breaking his iMac Pro, and I think that was very valid criticism. A lot of it I mentioned myself, but if you want to, you can check the Rene Ritchie video, which was still on his old channel, Vector, about why Apple refused to fix Linus iMac Pro. Now, what are my main points that this rant is supposed to say is that Linus has a lot on his sleeve, and I think that he ain't doing that great of a job of making the actual content that he could be making. Yes, the quantity is fantastic that he is putting out. The amount of viewers that he is attracting is phenomenal. But the most important part here is that this is exactly what the kind of behavior that Linus would be criticizing companies for, stretching themselves too thin, trying to do everything at once, focusing on a wider audience instead of a core group that might be dissatisfied with their recent moves. Hiring people that might be unqualified for some of the content that they are supposed to cover, or the kind of content they just generally have to create. The production quality in terms of editing and stuff cannot hold a candle to something like MKBHD anymore, because MKBHD smartly chooses what content to make and what not to make. And this isn't just a Linus problem. Like, there are a lot of Apple-centric YouTubers who I despise for their way of covering Windows devices. They will make them look so dumb and so unproductive because they just aren't used to Windows that it creates a false impression for Apple users. It creates an impression that there is no alternative, that you should always buy a Mac. Like, yes, I highly encourage you to buy a Mac if you like macOS, if you like the programs, if you like the integration with the ecosystem. Go buy a Mac. If you love the design, if you love the performance of the M1, there are so many reasons to get an M1 Mac. But a general complete incompetence from all Windows vendors, including Microsoft, and I'm not naming any names, there are just some reviews, especially on some Surface devices from some Apple-centric YouTubers that I just think are kind of embarrassing. I'm not calling anybody out because this ain't what the video is about, and I could criticize other YouTubers for hours on certain topics, but yeah, this isn't me just criticizing Linus. This is me imploring Linus to maybe downsize a little bit, maybe create a little less content, create more detailed content, create more follow-up content, create content that is more relevant to your actual channel instead of, I understand people like build guides, so make build guides. For all I care, make a build guide or just a building channel, PC building channel where it's like ASMR for tech nerds. I love that stuff myself. But don't ever like try to tell me that, yeah, I have all the qualification I need to make an Apple centric channel. Look at all the reviews I'm making. And I understand that Linus ain't that arrogant, and he probably will try out something good. And I promise you that I will stay neutral and I will react to the videos that he's gonna make. But I will also stay honest, and I believe that this move will further hurt him and the Linus Media Group in their wish to create actually good content. Because years prior, I would watch Linus Tech Tips videos on CPU and GPU reviews, or like how to use certain types of RAM and how they work. Now all of his content comes out at the same time as all the other YouTubers that also obviously have embargoes, but then he doesn't follow it up. The amount of benchmarking happening in those videos is less than half of what the competition is doing. And his videos on those topics have basically become superfluous. People watch it because they watch Linus content. They don't watch it because they believe that Linus is the only YouTuber that is telling them the truth about the performance. They watch Hardware Unboxed, Hardware Canucks. They watch Gamers Nexus especially. Like, and yes, I don't want LTT to become Gamers Nexus either. But where's the problem in actually focusing on reviews, focusing on what you can do with devices, and focusing on making videos that explain this like maybe half a year later, maybe like even 3 months later, depending on how important the product is. As it stands, what Linus will have done is he will have a review of the M1 Max that has some things that weren't working on them, or some things that still had to run through an emulator and stuff like that. But do I see him doing very much follow-up content on that, like explaining how much stuff has in the meantime gone native, how many bugs have been fixed, and not just Mag bugs or M1 bugs, but just general for the apps that were running there, like how according to many people, like even like Adobe apps that are notorious for crushing are somehow running better on this just fresh out the gate ARM-based Mac than they are on the decade-old Windows platform, where they have a ton of support baked into the very system because those are such core apps. Like, especially if you get like a professional graphics card, something like a Quadro, like, yeah, those graphics cards are validated to work with those programs. Now, this is me getting all out of hand, and I will just put it like this on YouTube. But my wish for Linus is focus on what you're doing best. This even includes doing stuff like Apple. Don't put Apple stuff on a separate channel. Don't pretend like Apple stuff is somehow different than the rest of the PC community. You're putting console stuff on LTT. People want to be able to choose between Mac and Windows freely. I think the market is showing that more than ever, probably even more so than when the MacBook Air came out and hit that $1,000 price tag. Don't treat Apple separately in that way. Like, if you want a channel with opinion pieces or covering different topics, including right to repair, yeah, then make a different channel if you have to. I don't think you have to. I think you have enough on your slate that you can just cut out and have that stuff instead. You're afraid to be too controversial in that regard. I fully understand that. You don't want to replace content that you know is guaranteed to hit 1 to 2 million views with maybe 500 to 800,000 views. You don't want content that gets too many dislikes. I understand that. But don't treat Apple differently. And treat it better, just like you should be treating better the kind of content that is key to your platform, key to your channels. You are Linus Tech Tips. You are born out of covering PC parts, giving people tips on how to actually use the computer. And this somehow has become the most rare type of content on your channel. To me, this is sad. And I'm actually saying this out of love for Linus as a creator himself. Now, if Linus ever sees this video, we had some very small interactions on Twitter. Maybe it's somebody who handles his Twitter. Like, yeah, if he sees it, he probably thinks I'm hating, or at least he will be angry, as he should be, on me hating on some of his staff. I'm sorry, I will just be neutral here and tell you what I believe, what I think a lot of people perceive, and I think Linus knows this himself. Otherwise, he would have retired in some way, shape, or form, or taken a less active role, because otherwise the people that he has hired would have been able to take certain positions in the company or take over certain responsibilities that he is carrying up until this day on his shoulders. And I think he would very much like a more relaxed work schedule right now. But he can't, because basically nobody but Anthony has enough charisma to hold the audience. When he left, the viewership numbers decreased. And obviously, even though LTT itself is very successful, even 13 million views won't always guarantee that you'll be able to pay 20, 25 workers all the tech that you need, support all the channels that you have, especially if people have to go or work overtime. Yeah, sure, you will break even and even make a little bit of money here and there, but obviously twice the views will essentially allow you to cover all the costs and put all of the rest as pure profit. Believe me, Linus Media Group is a very, very profitable business with all of his sponsorships, with all of his merchandise. Linus is crazy successful, and there is no envy here. I admire him crazily for that, and I wish him all the best. And for me personally, I believe that the better move for him and his content would be to go a little back to his roots. And whenever he covers Apple, which to me is important, not emotionally, but because I like his content and I would just like for this content to be better, I would like for it to go a little bit more into detail. I would like for it to be a little bit more understanding of maybe an Apple ecosystem perspective, because he has made some garbage Apple ecosystem content inside his own videos. This is basically about, people use AirPods, whatever, and people have iCloud content. Forget stuff like handoff, forget stuff like even like the Apple TV, which I understand is often maligned and forgotten, but forget how well this integrates. Forget everything from AirPlay, forget the consistency in the ecosystem of design, which apparently he doesn't think matters. Forget the consistency in the services themselves. Forget the fact that stuff like Apple Arcade, this is a gaming, it's not a primarily gaming focused channel, it's a tech focused channel, but it's mostly covering tech that allows you to game. Like graphics cards and CPUs don't really matter for the regular consumer unless you are using them as workstations or as gaming devices. So yeah, even just cover something like Apple Arcade, not with news, but just say oh, here's my iPhone, here's my iPad, here's the Mac. Instead we have, you don't even have to buy anything. You obviously have everything right there. Cover that. Put it onto this channel. Don't treat Apple differently. You have enough room. Stop cluttering up your entire channel with so much nonsense, with so much sponsored content. I understand that this might hurt you, but I fundamentally believe that with the amount of people you might attract with better content, especially with the amount of people actually sticking longer with a video, increasing the engagement with a video, maybe buying some different merchandise from you. I assure you that I won't be buying gaming mice pads from LTT. But if he made some Apple, even as a jokey type of merch, I would be interested. If it especially came in the context of fair reviews and all of that, yeah. believe me, I would love for that to happen. I would love for the Apple YouTube ecosystem to expand, because Linus not just has a separate channel where he suddenly treats Macs and Apple devices as if they don't belong with the rest, but where he actually covers like 10, maybe 15% of his content is consistently Apple related. Because believe me, there's room for that. iPhone reviews, iPad reviews, Mac reviews, some type of opinion pieces. Like, don't get me even started in their iPad reviews, because at some point they criticized it for not being a laptop. Then the Magic Keyboard came out and they told us that it now was a laptop, which is the entire point has been missed, that it isn't a laptop and it's not supposed to work like one. But some of the criticism are fair, so follow them up. Make opinion pieces on what you think should still be done. Like, make videos maybe that are 25 minutes long, if for all I care. Don't treat Apple differently. Don't treat Apple fans and Apple content differently, because it once again will create this opinion that somehow those are completely different system. There's nothing to engage with. Like, most of the stuff that all of us are using is coming from third parties. Like, we use even stuff like WhatsApp or Signal and Telegram. We use Google to search the web. No matter what browser we use, we can access still basically every website. Like, yeah, there's enough to be said about what Apple Tech can and cannot do, how or how not it should change, but it should be happening on his main channel, giving tips about tech from Linus to all people who want it. Clean up your channel. Focus less on all the sponsorships, especially because they're really, really hurting your image with some people that actually care about it. And then just be the best you can be, and then take some time off. For all I care, have Anthony maybe lead like all the Apple-centric content, and maybe some of the GPU and CPU reviews, which obviously would be a lot, but then you can have him do the main videos and have some other workers do some of the follow-up content, which obviously would be easier because they now have a baseline that Anthony has set the benchmark, so they would know what to do. Like, there's a lot that can be done to optimize it, and this has now gotten way too long, and I apologize for that, because I love good content and I will watch anybody who makes great content. But this to me would be a fundamentally wrong step for Linus to take, to now start making an Apple-centric extra channel, further diluting his own capabilities to make great content, because he obviously is almost slavishly in love with the idea of making daily content on all of the channels. So if this is what becomes of the Apple-centric Mac channel, I don't see, or the Apple-centric channel in general, it won't be just about Macs, obviously. Like, I don't see anything good about that, and I hope he changes his mind, and maybe some of this video will reach him in any kind of shape. Feel free to like the video, share it, comment underneath. Obviously, engagement is great. Watch it in full length, watch it in chunks. I will, as I said, I will do the first 4 or 5 minutes and I will label them as intro. Everything else is just a mishmash, so I cannot cut it up anymore. And I will leave it like this to have you experience a full-on iMark rant. I will try to do less of them because I usually am a calm individual. So please encourage Linus to do maybe some of the things that I've said here, if you agree with me. And above all else, always stay civil, always encourage discussion rather than just heated exchanges with hatred and disrespect. That's not how we roll. I can rant, but I can also show respect where it's due. And Linus deserves the respect, but this move does not. This is iMark turning out. Until the next one, guys.